Guess what, my friends? Guess what? It is time for another episode of the Entrepreneurial You podcast. I am your host, Henika Watkis-Porter, creator, of course, and producer of the show as well. Welcome to you, my regular listeners, viewers now, for those who are tuning in live on the live stream. And a very special welcome to you if this is your first time pouncing up on the Entrepreneurial You, bouncing up on the Entrepreneurial You. Welcome. I have been speaking to some amazing persons. Last week, I spoke with Pardeep Sangha, and he's a world leader in complete strategic advising. He's an award winning author of The Complete Man and a TV show host of Mind Your Own Business. He's an entrepreneur, speaker, and podcaster. This week, I'm going a little different, taking a different turn, and I'm excited about talking with a businessman, entrepreneur, and investor with over 40 years of experience as a senior executive in both public and private owned specialty chemicals company. But before I bring him on, of course, I have to definitely thank my sponsor who has been with me from day one. They've been my ride or die, my day one people, the Jamaica Stock Exchange. And here's a word from the Jamaica Stock Exchange. And after that, I will formally introduce my guests and get our conversation going. My guest on episode 303 of the Entrepreneurial You podcast is Theodore Ted Clark. Ted is a businessman, entrepreneur, and investor with over 40 years of experience as a senior executive in both private and public equity owned specialty companies, chemical companies. And Ted started as a shipping clerk, but he quickly rose through the ranks to become president and CEO of Products Research and Chemical Corporation, a global leader in aircraft and construction sealants and coatings. His new book, Buy and Build CEO, Leveraging Private Equity to Build a Winning Global Business, chronicles Ted's 14-year adventure in high stakes, high reward business. Welcome, Ted. It's a pleasure to have you.
No, it's great to be here with you. Thank you so much for asking me.
Absolutely. So I baptize all my guests with this question, and it is, what do you know, if any, about the Jamaican culture?
Well, that's actually a really good question. I mean, I guess all I really know is I live out here in Los Angeles, and it's a big entertainment area, and there is quite a bit of Jamaican art and music that's here locally. But I would say, other than that, that's about it.
Awesome. I have been to Los Angeles, and particularly downtown Los Angeles. Love it. It is such a buzz. It's like, it reminds me a lot of Kingston, Jamaica.
Oh, is that right? Yeah. It is definitely you know a very diverse city with all kinds of different culture and art and so forth. So it is a fun city to live in. That's for sure.
Awesome sauce. All right, so let us get into talking about leveraging private equity to build a winning global business. And secretly, because some person will not admit it, but secretly, I think everybody wants that. They want they want a business that is global, that is winning. Now, let's talk about. I want you to take it from the very beginning, and because I know that our audience, we have audience, that span the gamut of experienced entrepreneurs to, they're just kind of getting their feet wet or even at the ideation stage. So let's talk about, first and foremost, when we talk about private equity, what exactly are we talking about, Ted?
Sure. So private equity is it's the it's the opposite of public equity, I guess, the way you would think about it, right? So with public companies, you have an opportunity as an individual investor to you know, uh, buy shares of all the great companies that are listed on the public stock exchange. With private equity, it's they're usually firms that then work with, large pension funds or college endowments or insurance companies who are looking to invest money and get returns on that. And so the first thing private equity funds do is they go raise a fund. They get people to commit money to their fund, and then what they do is they look for and source opportunities to invest alongside entrepreneurs or existing management teams, or potentially take private companies, family-owned companies to more privately invested companies, and sometimes taking public companies private, right? So it's an asset class that tends to outperform public companies, public company equity, public company equities, and therefore, every large pension fund, retirement fund, et cetera, will allocate a little bit of capital, some capital to private equity investing. It helps them bring up the average returns on their other investments in things like stocks and bonds and so forth.
All right, great response, Ted. Before I go on, let me just say hello to my peeps on Facebook and LinkedIn who have been shouting us out. So we have on LinkedIn, we have Omar Fennell and Joseph Roach, and on Facebook, Alyssa Allen. Thank you so much for joining us live for the recording of this episode of the Entrepreneurial You podcast. So you said something which is quite poignant for me, Ted, and is that the private equity dealing usually tend to outperform publicly listed companies. Why is that though? Why do you think that is?
Well, I think there's a couple of reasons. Well, one is that typically a private equity firm will look for, what they're really trying to do is partner with good businesses. So first of all, in the main, they're not trying to do turnaround businesses or things like that. They're trying to find good businesses in markets that have very positive macro trends, and that are well run. And then they're also looking for kind of a growth story. How can they help the management grow those businesses to be bigger and more profitable, and create something, what I like to say is worth more than the sum of the parts, right? So in many cases, they'll buy a company and then they'll look to add a number of other companies to it to create a larger enterprise that's more valuable than when they started. And so that's primarily why. I mean, it's a style of investing where the board of directors of the company, as an example, is more focused on strategic and operational issues on a more regular basis than potentially the board of a public company.
Awesome sauce. Good morning to you, Dr. Marcia Thomas Powell, who has joined us on LinkedIn as well. Now we want to find out at this very early stage of our conversation, Ted, how does one, find the right fit? So the right equity partner to the right business. Let's talk about that matching, that fits.
Yeah, sure. So, well, I'll talk a little bit about my story here, because I had become an entrepreneur later in life, right? I was close to 50 years old. I had worked in public companies, and I had run a large subsidiary of a public company for some time in a specific industry. And I developed a strategy to participate in the consolidation of that industry by using my knowledge and contacts and so forth. But to do that, I needed to buy a company. I needed to start somewhere, and so I looked for a private equity firm that that had some experience in, one, specialty chemicals, and two, in sort of buy and build. They had experience in buy and build strategy for investing, and they had a relatively new fund, so they could support the initial acquisitions and add-ons. And so I did go through a process, which I outline in my book, about, not every private equity firm is the same, right? So you really have to look at finding the right fit between yourself as an operator and your partner and your new partner, which is the private equity firm, so that you know that you have what I call a shared vision between yourself and the private equity firm as to the type of business that you want to build. And as an investor, you want to start with the end in mind, right? You want to start your process by sort of understanding where you want to go, right? So that over a period of 5 or 6 years, you're on the right track or not. So it's one of the more critical things if you're considering partnering with private equity. You really want to consider and do your homework and do your due diligence on the private equity firms that you're talking with to determine which one would be the best to support your strategy.
Mm-hmm. So I know is it in chemistry, opposite attract and like particles repel each other. That's the theory. So
Yeah.
when you're going for a partner, are you looking for somebody, a partner who is like you in terms of the modus operandi, how you go about things? So where do you start looking for the likeness versus where do you need to look at a divergence? Where you have different of opinions, of views, of ways of operating.
Yeah, I think the first thing is trying to find a partner who has invested in the same sector that you're trying to build a business in, right? So you want to have some partners that, as an example, in specialty chemicals, there's some unique characteristics in terms of safety, health and safety, and environmental protection and so forth that you have to be very cognizant of and understand how to manage those things. And so you want a partner that will support, operating a company in a sustainable, safe way over a period of time, right? So having partners that understand that maybe have operated in the markets that you're selling into helps a lot because when you're talking about the future, you're always talking about what's, I call it the kind of an aspirational but achievable vision, right? So you have to push the envelope a little bit, but you have to have a vision and a plan and a strategy that's achievable. And then you have to have a partner who's investing money with you that believes in that plan. And so, again, it has a lot to do with that. You also have to realize you're going to be with this partner for the next 5 to 7 years. So, it's like interviewing for a job or, any type of partnership, even a personal relationship. You want to do your due diligence on both sides and spend more time up front, really trying to understand is this the right partner for me going forward. So I would say, the front end of these private equity deals are really important to do your diligence. They'll certainly do their diligence on you as a partner, as an operator as well. And so it's an important part of the process. And I think if you do that right, it puts you in good shape to, weather, whatever storms you're going to weather, because in every business, it's not a straight line to success, right? So.
Right. So on the journey, as a startup, you're encouraged to come up with your minimum viable product. Don't wait until you reach a particular quality or whatever before you launch. You launch with what is that minimum viable product. Now, similarly, I want to think of what the concept called, which I'm creating, the minimum viable state of readiness, MVSR. So what would be in your mind, and perhaps even based on your experience, Ted, the minimum viable state of readiness that a startup, a business needs to have before they even think about considering taking on private equity in their business?
Yeah, well, I guess a couple of things. One, but I should step back a little bit. Private equity investors are typically going to be investing in, like I said earlier, good companies. And, part of being a good company is having reliable cash flows, right? So, part of what you're doing when you're setting something like this up is you're, again, in this due diligence phase, you're looking at, what kind of cash flows has the company historically generated, and how much debt could that company take on and still have the ability to kind of deleverage. You take on debt when you do a private equity deal, and you want to deleverage that debt. And you want to look, if you're looking for acquisitions, you want to look for the EBITDA or the cash flow of the target that you're looking at, and then also whatever synergies you're going to gain, right? And so at the start, to get back to your question, at the start, it's really about that business plan that really understands all these characteristics of your strategy. So, the plan and strategy has to be such that, when you start, you have a pretty good, there's no guarantees, but you have a pretty good sense that, you're going to be able to generate enough cash to pay down debt, to go out and do additional deals, to drive organic growth, to invest in capital, et cetera, et cetera. And so having a fully formed business plan, being able to set up the capital structure right at the very beginning, as I said, you don't want to take on too much debt so that you're handcuffed and you can't go out and can invest in the business. But you want to use the balance sheet. I mean, clearly, one of the reasons you get good returns with private equity investing is because you use the balance sheet in a way to kind of reinvest in the business, so that you can drive organic growth and potentially inorganic growth, M&A, et cetera, to gain returns that are going to be higher than sort of your peer kind of public companies.
All right. You mentioned something which I want you to spend a little more time on, Ted, and it's the concept of deleveraging. Kind of expound on that a little more for us, please.
Yeah, sure. So, when you're setting up the original balance sheet, it's going to have, you're going to put in equity. So, you're putting in the equity, your own equity, and that of the private equity company, and then you're going to borrow a little bit, so you're going to have a little leverage on the balance sheet. Mm-hmm. And then what you're going to want to do is have a business plan in place that that kind of spells out what it is you're going to, the steps you're going to take to continue to grow the business. And then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to try and reduce your debt through the cash flow that you generate on a kind of consistent and reliable basis, right? So as you're reducing your debt, it gives you the opportunity to continue to invest in the business through the use of the rest of the cash flow that you have, right? Or to go out and borrow more money, right? So the idea is really, when you're doing kind of a buy and build M&A, you
have a buy and build what?
Buy and build mergers and acquisitions. So
thank you.
Sorry for the jargon.
That's okay. We just want to make sure that everybody's clear that's listening.
Yeah. So the idea really is, you use the cash flow of your company, and then you use the cash flow of the company that you acquire. You use the cost savings that you get by putting two companies together, and then you use all that cash to really try and drive down the debt of the company, and then put yourself in a position to maybe make another acquisition. And in my case, we made 19 acquisitions over 14 years to build a company from 35 million and 5 million in cash flow to 640 million in sales and 140 million in cash flow. And wow. Use that process of sort of using our own cash flow to kind of drive the growth. So the way that you make money in this is that you put in the original amount of equity, and then you really try to use the company's cash flow to fund all the rest of the business development over a period of time to create a larger company.
All right, awesome sauce, Ted. I want us to touch on team and how that helps in the whole grand scheme of things. But before I do that, let me just pause. And I want to encourage those who are tuning in live, as well as those listening via the podcast, to go and request to become a member of the Entrepreneurial You Facebook group. Yes, it was inactive for a while. We have big plans for that group and the community members that are there. So if you are an entrepreneur thinking about being an entrepreneur, know an entrepreneur, and I'm sure that's everybody, then you are encouraged to send a request to be a part of the Facebook community on the Entrepreneurial You group, that group on Facebook. So please go ahead. We are going to be doing some big things in that group, and it's exclusive to persons who are part of the Entrepreneurial You posse, as we say in Jamaica. All right, so let's get back to this interesting, intriguing, and insightful, having all my eyes going on there, conversation with Ted Clark. And Ted is just a wealth of knowledge and experience as it relates to private equity, what he's been able to do with his business, getting investors and himself now investing in businesses, right? And acquiring all those other businesses, large assets and stuff. So let's talk about the team from the get-go, Ted. What was it like for you, and did you have to, how much did you have to change and shift around until you get the right fit?
Yeah, for the team, yeah. Well, talking about the team, that I was trying to think of it in the bigger universe, right? So for me, the team is the investors, the board, the management team,
Mm-hmm.
the employees. To a large extent, it's also to the suppliers, and of course, I think even the customers are probably the most important part of the team. But I always like to feel everybody's kind of part of the team. But in the end, the team is the most important thing, and particularly in my business, which is what we call a capital light business, where it's about
Knowledge and
the
experience.
intellectual capability of the team, their expertise. As an example, I mean, if you're running a chemical company, you have lots of chemists and other technical people. You have chemical engineers. You've got sales and marketing specialists and so forth. And so for me, building the team's always been the most important thing. And I think the biggest part of building a team is making sure that everyone that's on, at least on the, beginning with the senior leadership team, has the same vision for the company going forward. And then I also like, I like the team to work together in an integrated way, right, rather than in silos. So, the HR team is, in my mind, just as important as the operations team, and the sales and marketing team is just as important as the HR team. So we try to create like a team of experts, that are driving driving to the same goal and vision, and doing that, bringing in people. What I tried to do with my company is I tried to find and recruit people that were working at or had experience working at larger companies, so that they were experts in their functions, right? So they really were good at, like, I'd bring in an HR person and run a company 3 or 4 times bigger than mine, an operations person the same way, sales and marketing person. Then I try to bring them in and then get them all to work together around our goal of taking this small company and making it into a big company, right? Which is tricky, right? Because your team really has to believe that they can do that, right? And it's like everything else. You have setbacks and economic issues happening and other different challenges in my case, over about a 14-year period. And you'd really need to get people to be resilient and to overcome those things without sort of losing track of the idea of where we're going and where we want to go, and that how we're going to get there. So yeah, I think team for my businesses have always been the most important consideration as the leader of the business.
Awesome. And it sounds like it all came together so nicely at the beginning. But was that the case though, Ted? Was it initially also jelly and and smooth sailing.
Yeah, it's never smooth sailing. I mean, it's actually working in private equity as a leader. What you have to get used to is working in ambiguous situations, right? Because all the parts don't come together right away, right? So you start at one place and you're trying to get someplace else, and all kinds of things happen in between. But I look at it in phases, and each phase got harder and harder, right? So the first phase was, I need to go find somebody to partner with in private equity, and that took about 6 months to go through and do all that. And then once that was done, I need to go out and buy my first company, right? So I started this without a company, and went out and we looked to acquire a platform company, or the basis for building out our strategy. And I had a year to do that. So that used a lot of pressure there to find the right company and get that deal done. And then after that, it's they say, and I think people are right to think this, that uh, the riskiest thing in business is two things. One is moving a factory from one place to another place, and the other one is integrating mergers and acquisitions, right? So we had to get really good at that. As I said, it's a people business, and you're buying lots of different companies. You have lots of different points of view coming into your business, and you have to, work hard to manage that. And sometimes people don't quite get all the way there, and you have to make, some tough decisions along the way. Um, but but yeah, I tell people in retrospect, it feels like once you've done it, it's like, okay, I did it. It was, but when you're doing it, it's hard, and but it's exciting and it's challenging. And if you do it right, it can be a lot of fun, right? It's an opportunity to really, to stretch yourself and get well beyond your comfort zone. I mean, you have to be prepared to do that if you're gonna really try to build and scale a business, fairly rapidly, um, and success, and to do it successfully.
Mhm. As you share about the different acquisitions that you've been doing over time, one of the question that comes to mind, Ted, is the integration of culture, right? Because then naturally, how you're doing things, you're used to doing things versus how things are being done over there, and integrating that into what you're doing. Tell me about what that process has been like for you.
Yeah, that's a great question. In my mind, it's more important than even the original business plan and strategy, right? So once you start to do this, you have to kind of build out, what is the culture, what culture do you want, right? So I think it's important, even with a small business, for you to set out, like, what does it mean to be, in our case, Royal Adhesives and Sealants? Like, what are we trying to do? How do we all want to behave, both internally and externally? What are our core values? Um, and then, honestly, as the leader, you have to really live those values. You have to be the one that communicates it. You have to communicate it, like, you know often, and consistently, and then you have to live it, right? So and when you do that, I think it's so powerful. That it's such a powerful way to build a team, and particularly in private equity, because I said it's an ambiguous situation, right? Because you're depending upon the idea that you can find these acquisitions. You're depending upon the idea that you can integrate them. You're depending upon the idea that you can get everybody to row in the same direction to build the business, and you're doing it very, very quickly, right? You're spending lots and lots of time doing this very, very quickly, um, and really, in the end, the thing that makes the difference is the culture of the company. And you want to be proud of the company when you're done as well, right? You want to look back and say, what, we did this, we did it correctly. We didn't cut corners. We didn't take advantage of people. We communicated well, and we were transparent, right? So for me, one of my big cultural tenets is, to be very open about what we're trying to accomplish and achieve, and what our results are to date. And and what that means is not just telling people the good news; it means telling them the bad news, and also telling them what challenges we have and what impacts those challenges could have. Because sometimes leaders are afraid to um, you know, you know, tell their teams that, hey, we could be in trouble here, if we don't do something right. And I don't want to, I don't want to worry you, but I also want to be honest with you. These are the things we have to, that we have to overcome to be successful. And being transparent and open, I think it's always helped me. I'll just leave it at that, but I think it's important.
Mm-hmm. And some of what you said earlier, a wise man once says, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." Awesome. All right. So there are two questions I have for you. One, I think let me leave that one until the last. But as it relates to building, that business, that winning global business, and leveraging private equity, what would be your summary thoughts around that for those that are listening? So just give us your summary thoughts around that concept.
Yeah, well, I think, and one of the things that I talk about in my book is that, I had been running a global business, right? So one of the things about doing this is I wanted to build a business that I could use all the skills that I had learned over, a 25-year period, and put them to use doing something. So building a global business was always on my mind from the very start when we bought just a small Midwestern company to start this off with. Um, but part of the big issue there is, as you grow your businesses and work with your customers begin to expect that you're going to be global, right? So if you're working with companies like Boeing or General Motors or Mercedes or BMW or uh, BYK or BKD in China, Kia, these types of people, you have you really to service them properly, you need to be global at some point, right? So that was really the goal from the beginning for me. It was part of our strategy, and it was kind of part of it in my DNA and how I had previously run, sealant adhesive businesses prior to that.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. You mentioned, and it wasn't missed on me, that when you got started, you were close to 50.
Yeah.
Speak to someone right now, perhaps even in their 30s, and think, oh my gosh, woe is me, I'm done because I haven't started anything.
Yeah, it's yeah, I was really close. I was 49, I think, when I started to do this. But I had experience. I had done well in public companies, and and it's a big leap, right? Because you can get pretty comfortable in a public company, right? You're paid well, and you get all the perks and all that stuff, and you travel all over the world. And to leave that and to start, basically with nothing, right? Just start with an idea was a scary thing to do when you're 49 years old, right? Because what if it fails, right? Now I'll lose another 2 or 3 years of my useful life of being in business, and so it was something I really had to spend some time considering doing. But I fancy myself as kind of an entrepreneur in my work in public companies, right? So I was always pushing hard to grow my business,
Innovate and
and all
mhm.
these things. And it occurred to me one time the company that was the larger company I was with got sold, and lots of people made money, but I didn't, right? So it was kind of like, what? I think I'd like to try and start my own business on my own account with the goal. My goal was to become a capitalist, right? I mean, in the real sense of the word, that I wanted to create enough wealth for myself that I could then invest in private equity, right? So, I could go out and since then I have this couple of my own sort of family companies and other things that I've done, but I wanted to create enough value for myself so that I could take a little bit more charge of, what I wanted to do and how I wanted to invest and make decisions about capital allocation And that's really that's really what drove me to build a successful business.
Awesome. And I think I would have said finally, but finally, I want to hear about a little more in summary about your new book, Buy and Build CEO, Leveraging Private Equity to Build a Winning Global Business.
Yeah, well,
What inspired that?
yeah, well, I wrote a book prior to that. It's my second book actually. So the first book was really about starting as a shipping clerk and becoming a CEO, and then the
And I
second.
was a shipping clerk at one of my first jobs too. Yes.
There you go. Yeah, and then the second book was really about. I just found the idea of working with private equity was a fascinating experience for me, and it's really written. It's really about that, but it's also written from an operator's point of view. So it's sort of written to other people that would be like me. Maybe you're 45 or 50 or whatever, and you're running a division of a public company, and you know your markets well, you're well respected in your industry, and you want to start your own business, or you want to participate, you know drive your own strategy. And so the book talks about how to do that, right? How to pitch a private equity group, how to develop a strategy, how to get the financing in place, how to develop an M&A sourcing strategy, how to integrate businesses, how to stay focused on your long-term goals. And so it's really a book about using this kind of alternative set of capital, this private equity capital, to create your own business rather than sort of working in a big public company. That I mean, if I was to distill it, that's what I was kind of after when I wrote the book.
Mhm. Awesome sauce. All right. So thank you so much, Ted Clark. And before you go, we want to hear how it is that we can get your book, one, and just be in contact with you.
Sure. Well, the book you can get on Amazon, and other e-book retailers. And then if you want to learn more about me, you can go to my website, which is tedclarkauthor.com. And there will be information on the books, articles, and other things that I've written about private equity and other business subjects. So that's the best way.
All right. Awesome, awesome, awesome sauce. Again, I want to thank you. And I have been speaking with Ted Clark. Thank you so much, Ted.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Ted, as you would have caught at the beginning, is a businessman, entrepreneur, investor. He has over 40 years of experience in both, as a senior executive, both with public and private equity owned, especially specialty chemical companies. And the interesting thing about Ted is that he rose from being a shipping clerk to becoming the president and CEO of Products Research and Chemical Corporation. And they've just been doing the global impact thing. They're a global leader in aircraft and construction sealants and coatings. Check out his new book, Buy and Build CEO, Leveraging Private Equity to Build a Winning Global Business. Such a pleasure it has been. Um, the main takeaway for me from this episode, this conversation with Ted, may not necessarily have anything to do with private equity, which is what we've been talking about, but more to do with the fact that he said when he just got started in his business, he was 49, people 49 years old. A lot of persons are in their 30s and they're frustrated, they're thinking they haven't done anything with their lives. You perhaps are in your 30s, you're thinking that to yourself, you haven't done anything and you are just a waste of time. Well, no, it's never too late to start. And we've seen many, many instances. We've read about many, many instances where people have started very late. When we look at the Colonel, the KFC, I don't remember what age he started. I think it was 60 or something to that effect. But it was not early. It was not in his 20s. It was not even in his 30s, right? So don't be put off by the fact that you may not have accomplished your goals in the time that you thought you would have, and the timelines that you set for yourself. Just pick up the pieces today. Today is another opportunity for you to pick up the pieces and move forward. Don't let another 5 years pass, another 3 years pass, another 10 years pass, and you look back and you say, what if? Today is an opportunity for you to correct that wrong. that injustice that you've done to yourself. You owe it to yourself, you owe it to the world to be the best that you can possibly be. What has been your standout moment from this episode? So really glad that you've joined us. I would love to hear for you to love for you to send your feedback at Watkis-Porter@gmail.com, or you can connect right here on social media for those that are streaming live with me. Watkis-Porter, you can find me wherever on social media. And you're also invited to follow this podcast on your favorite podcast app. So whether it's I was about to say iTunes, but it's Apple Podcast. So whether it's Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, Google, you name it, there are a myriad of podcast app. And for those of you who don't know how to find a podcast app, let me just tell you, if you're using the iPhone, bless your heart, because it comes the Apple Podcast app, that little purple icon comes preloaded on your phone. So you have no excuse, right? You just go there and you search for the Entrepreneurial You and you hit follow. I think it's follow is a term now and not subscribe or whatever, that little tick, you check that button and you are able to access the Entrepreneurial You. And if you subscribe, then every time an episode goes live, you hear it. You don't have to do anything. It just pops up and it start playing, or just go to the app and just play. Or for those of you who are Android users, God bless you. I was there no longer. Just go into the store and look for podcast app. Just put in podcast app, and a myriad of them will populate your search, and you select the one that you think you want to work with. You do the same thing once you've downloaded it on your phone. All you have to do is put in the Entrepreneurial You, and you subscribe, and you can get to listen forever and ever. Amen. Right? And you can also connect with me for all things podcasting at Watkis-Porter.com. It has been so much my pleasure hosting you live and also to have this podcast up for you. Now, as usual, I end with according to the scriptures, and let them sacrifice thank offerings and tell of his works with songs of joy. Psalm 107, verse 22. Walk good.